All right, good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon now. Um, just so you know, we are all streaming live on YouTube, so that way the public has access to court proceedings. So please keep that in mind. My name is Judge Ferry. I am with the Clayton County Magistrate Court, and today this is what is called your first appearance hearing. I'm going to make announcements that will apply to all of you and some of you. So I highly recommend that you listen up carefully. As I mentioned, we are streaming live on YouTube. So anything that you say before the court can be used against you should your case go to trial. We are not here to try your case, nor are we here to take a plea. The reason you are here is so the court can inform you of the charges that have been brought against you. So the court can advise you of certain rights that you have today and throughout the rest of the proceeding of your case. So the court can determine whether or not there will be bond set in your case. And also for the court to schedule a preliminary hearing, which I'll explain shortly, and also to determine whether or not you qualify for the appointment of an attorney to represent you in your case. During this and all other proceedings, you have the following rights. As I mentioned, you have the right to remain silent and say nothing. Should you choose to give up that right, anything you say during this proceeding may be used against you if your case goes to trial. You also have the right to the presumption of innocence until the state proves your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to an indictment by a grand jury if you've been charged with a felony, or the right to what we call an accusation if you have been charged with a misdemeanor. You have the right to a speedy and public trial by jury. You have the right to see, hear, and cross-examine any witnesses that are called to testify against you. You have the right to compel witnesses to come to court on your own behalf by issuing a subpoena to that witness. You have the right to testify and offer evidence in your own defense, but if you choose not to do so, there will be no presumption of guilt raised against you. You also have the right to have an attorney represent you. That will be an attorney you can hire, or if you completed a court-appointed application for counsel, the court will determine whether or not you qualify to have counsel represent you, or you certainly have the right to represent yourself. Now, I'm going to discuss the issue of bond, and I want to make sure that everyone is listening as I discuss the issue of bond in your case. Some of you may be allowed to post a bond. I will tell you that this calendar is a pretty big calendar. Many of you have extensive criminal histories, and based on some of your offenses, based on the seriousness of the offenses, based on your previous criminal record, and based on the court's concern about the protection of the public, many of you will not get a bond today. If you do not get a bond today, your bond hearing will take place on another day. That day will be September 30th. And I will let you know as you come before the court whether or not you are that person who will not be getting a bond. But it will take place on September 30th at 8:30 a.m. And during that time, the state will be present. You can have any witnesses present. Your attorney will be present and you will be present. And the issue of bond will be discussed at that time. It will be by Zoom video conference. For those of you who are granted a bond here today, you will be allowed to post what we call unrestricted bonds in order for you to be released from jail while your case is pending. You can post bond in 3 different ways. The first way is you can pay the cash bond. You will pay the cash to the Clayton County Sheriff's Office. You will pay the bond amount that I give you plus any additional fees that the Sheriff's Office mandates, and the sheriff will hold that cash until the end of your case. And at the end of your case, the money will be returned to whoever posted the cash bond for you. So if your bond is $2,000 and you have $2,000 cash to pay to the sheriff's office, that's what you'll pay using cash. The second way is the most common way. The second way is going through a bonding company, a commercial bonding company that's approved by the Clayton County Sheriff's Office. If you decide to use the bonding company will charge you a certain percentage of whatever your bond is. I don't know what their percentage is. They have a bond schedule sheet and it varies. It could be 10%, 12%, or up to 15%. So you will have to call around to the different bonding companies to find out how much they'll charge you to post your bond. So for example, if I tell you your bond is $1,000, you need to call the bonding company. And if they tell you they'll charge you 15%, that's $150. So that means you'll have to pay the bonding company $150. And then the bonding company will post the bond for you. So that way you can be released. So that's how it works if you go through a commercial bonding company. If you decide to not pay cash or you're not going through a commercial bonding company, the third option is you can use property. If you decide to use property, then that property that you decide to put up to post your bond has to have net equity of at least 3 times your bond amount. So if your bond is $1,000 and you want to use property to post the bond for you, your property has to have net equity in it of at least 3 times that amount, which would be $3,000. Those are the 3 options. Now, all of you will have the special condition that you cannot violate any laws while you're out on bond. If you violate any laws while you're out on bond, your bond will be revoked and you may have additional charges brought against you. And then you won't receive another bond. You'll just have to sit in jail until your case is resolved. Some of you will have special conditions on your bond. For example, you may have the special condition that you cannot contact someone. If I say you are to stay away and not contact a particular individual, it doesn't matter if it's your son, your children, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, coworker, sibling, it means no contact, even if you stay in the same household, because you're also going to have the condition that you can't return to whatever residence if you all share a household. If you do share a household, make sure you let me know, because I will give you the opportunity to go back to that resident accompanied with a sheriff to collect some of your belongings that are not in dispute. You can't go back without a sheriff. And you have to do that or make that appointment within 10 days of being released from jail. So again, if I say no contact, that means stay away from that person. No direct contact, no indirect contact. Don't contact that person by mail, email, pager, telephone, through a third person. No social media contact. And you cannot go near that person's place of work, employment, or residence. So we take these bond conditions seriously. If I say don't go back to a particular place, whether it's a gas station or whether it's a home or whether it's someone's workplace, that means do not go back. If you violate any of these special conditions, then your bond may be revoked. As I mentioned, you will not be entitled to another bond. You could have additional charges of aggravated stalking, influencing a witness, or any other charges that the law may provide. It could be brought against you, and you could be sentenced up to 10 years in prison and fined up to $20,000. We take these conditions seriously. If you have any family member who will be assisting you in posting bond, your family member will be provided information about your bond after we are done here today. So I have a large calendar. As I mentioned, I think it's over 40 of you all. I believe it's 41 of you all. I've had to review over 800 pages of criminal history today. So that's why it took a little longer to get started. So it's a lot we have to go through today. So just make sure that you mind yourself, as my mom would say, be respectful to the court. Don't be disruptive, because the quicker we're able to get through your case, then the quicker we can get this paperwork signed and sent over to the jail. So that way your loved ones or family members know what your status is and they can begin working on your release. The longer we take here today, the longer it will take me to sign off on orders, and the longer it'll take the jail to process everything. So keep that in mind. Now, if you are currently on active probation, which many of you are, depending on your charges and the offense and what you're on probation for, you may not get a bond here today. You need to talk to your probation officer, because we will give your probation officer an opportunity to decide whether he or she want to actually revoke your probation. Now, this is typically done during what is called your preliminary hearing. So each of you have a court date. The next court date is called your preliminary hearing date. The purpose of that date is to determine whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you incarcerated on your charges while your case waits to go to trial. In other words, whether or not there's enough probable cause to justify keeping you incarcerated. If you are charged with misdemeanors only, I will give you an opportunity to determine whether or not, or to tell me whether or not you want to waive your preliminary hearing date. If you waive your preliminary hearing date, it just moves your case along a little faster. You're still entitled to a bond if I give you a bond. Waiving your preliminary hearing date does not affect your ability to get a bond. If you bond out, you automatically waive your preliminary hearing date. It goes away automatically because you're bonded out. There's no reason to have a hearing about whether you should still be incarcerated if you're no longer incarcerated. That's if you have only a misdemeanor. If you've been charged with a felony and a misdemeanor, your preliminary hearing date will stay calendar. If you're charged with a felony, your preliminary hearing date will remain calendar. It's only if you have misdemeanor charges will I give you the option to waive your preliminary hearing date. So I will ask each of you that if you're only charged with misdemeanors once you come before me. Again, keep in mind, we are streaming live on YouTube. Even though this is a remote video conference proceeding, this is still a formal court proceeding. So please conduct yourself accordingly. If you are disruptive to the court or disrespectful to the court, you do have the potential to be charged with contempt of court or any other charges that I choose to add. And I will not proceed with your hearing today. I will just reschedule you for another day, and we'll come back and we'll try again. So please be respectful to the court. I would like to have each of you go ahead and raise your right hand. Let me swear you in. Do you swear and affirm any statements you give before this court or any statements given in your court-appointed application for counsel is true and correct, so help you God? If so, say I do and lower your hands. All right, thank you. So we're going to start with the medical pod first with Mr. Elvin Pryor. Okay, so Mr. Pryor, you have been charged with felony possession of crack cocaine. Your bond is set at $5,000. You have a misdemeanor charge of driving on a suspended license. That bond is preset at $1,500. You've also been charged with a window tint violation, and that bond is set at $500. So your total bond amount is $7,000. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th, 2022. That will take place by Zoom video conference at 8:30 a.m. And I believe, let me see, let me look at your court-appointed counsel form.
He doesn't have one, Your Honor. He didn't fill one out, Your Honor.
You didn't? Okay. I am just going to go ahead and appoint counsel to represent him. So Mr. Pryor, if you decide to hire your own counsel later, you can do that, but you have been appointed an attorney to represent you. All right, that concludes your first appearance hearing. Best of luck to you. All right, thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, are we ready to begin with the female inmates, Deputy?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Good afternoon, ma'am. May I have your name, please?
Yeah, Brown.
Okay, Ms. Brown, you've been charged with a misdemeanor offense of battery, family violence. Your bond is set at $5,000. As a condition to your bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with Eric Daniel. Your preliminary hearing date is currently scheduled for September 27, 2022. You do have the option of waiving that court date because you're just charged with a misdemeanor. Do you want to waive your court date or do you want to keep it calendared?
I'll waive it.
I can't hear you, speak up.
I'll waive it.
Okay, do you believe you'll be able to post bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you understand what you've been charged with and the special conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Are you currently employed?
I'm not.
All right. Okay, I will appoint an attorney to represent you, and you will be provided with the waiver form at the jail. So just make sure you sign the waiver form, waiving your preliminary hearing date, and you will receive a new court date in the mail. Do you and Mr. Daniel reside together?
No, we don't.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions for the court?
You gotta cover your face.
I don't. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You may be excused. Have a good day.
Holt. You can go back there. You send them the kid, they ain't gonna wait. Okay.
Okay, good morning. Can you please state your name?
It's Iliana Holt.
Okay, is it Lena Driscoll Holt?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you have been charged with 2 misdemeanor offenses. Simple battery, family violence, that bond is set at $3,000. And cruelty, hang on. Cruelty to children in the first degree, that bond has been set at $4,000. So your total bond amount is $7,000. As a special condition to your release on bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with Kennedy Holt or Caden Holt. Do you understand what you've been charged with and those special conditions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th, 2022, because your cruelty to children is charged as a felony. The battery offense is a misdemeanor. But your preliminary hearing date is September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. That will take place by Zoom video conference. Let me review your court-appointed application. Is your last name James as well?
No, it's not. It was, but it's not now.
Okay. All right, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yes, I've seen your name appear a couple of different ways.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so I am granting your request to have counsel appointed to represent you. Do you have any questions about the information I've just provided?
No, Your Honor.
All right, best of luck to you. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Harris. Harris.
Are you Jerica Harris?
Jerica Harris.
Jerica Harris. Ma'am, you've been charged with a misdemeanor cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. Your bond is set at $2,000 with the special condition that you are to stay away and have no contact with Sonia Fisher. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond and special conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your next court date is September 27th, 2022. That's your preliminary hearing date that I described earlier. You can choose to have it waived, meaning that court date will be canceled. You'll receive a new court date in the mail, which will be your arraignment where you plead guilty or not guilty. If you don't waive it, we'll leave it calendared. And once you bond out, if you do bond out, it will be automatically canceled and you'll receive a new court date. Do you want to waive that court date or you want to keep it scheduled?
Waive it.
Okay. You will receive a waiver form at the jail. Just make sure you complete it fully so that I can read your name, make sure it's legible. And you will receive a new court date in the mail once you're released. I reviewed your application for court-appointed counsel and I have approved it. So you will have an attorney to represent you in your case. You have any questions for the court, ma'am? Okay, best of luck to you.
Hey.
Good afternoon. May I have your name?
Mercedes Hatton.
Okay, so Ms. Hatton, you have been charged with one misdemeanor family violence criminal trespass. That bond is set at $2,000. And you've also been charged with one family violence criminal damage in the second degree. Based on the value of the item, is charged as a felony. So your total bond amount, or excuse me, the bond for that offense is $3,000. So your total bond amount is $5,000. As a special condition to your bond, you can't have any contact with your son, Kadir Eason, while this case is pending. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as what you've been charged with in your bond condition?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe you can make bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. Let me review your application for court-appointed counsel. Okay, I am appointing an attorney to represent you, so you will have counsel present with you at your preliminary hearing and throughout the remainder of the case. Do you have any questions for me, Ms. Hatton?
No, ma'am.
Okay, best of luck to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, may I have your name?
Yes, it's Iliana Irvin.
Okay, Ms. Irvin, you've been charged with one misdemeanor offense of criminal trespass damage to property. Your bond is set at $2,500. As a special condition to your bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with your sister, Autumn Irvin. You also can't go back to the incident location. I believe it was her place of employment located at 3871 Highway 138, Stockbridge, Georgia, 30281, while this bond condition is in place. You understand what you've been charged with and what I've mentioned as far as your bond and bond conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Your preliminary hearing date is currently scheduled for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom. You do have the option of waiving it since you are charged with a misdemeanor. Do you want to waive it or do you want to keep it scheduled?
Yeah, you can waive it. That's fine.
Okay. So you will receive a waiver form at the jail. Just make sure you sign it legibly so I know that it's you that waived it. And you will receive a new court date in the mail on when to return back to court. Let me review your application for court-appointed counsel. Okay, I am granting your request, and I've appointed an attorney to represent you who will be present with you in court. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Okay, best of luck to you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Sam.
Good afternoon. Can you please state your name?
So Mendez?
Okay. All right, Ms. Mendez, you have been charged with one felony theft by taking. Your bond is set at $5,000. As a special condition to your bond, you're to stay away and have no contact with the named owner of the vehicle, who is Maria Pacheco. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond amount and your bond conditions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, your next court date is your preliminary hearing date. It's scheduled for September 28, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. I am reviewing your application for a court-appointed counsel. I am appointing an attorney to represent you in these proceedings. So your attorney will be present at your court date. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, Your Honor.
Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, stand up. You can stand up.
Yeah, I can stand.
You don't gotta bring it way back there. Just stand up real quick.
All right. Mm.
Just have a seat. Don't worry.
Good afternoon. What's your name?
Massentel.
Massentel Morgan. Okay, so ma'am, you've been charged with one misdemeanor offense of battery. Your bond is set at $5,000. As a special condition to your bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with James Harper. And also it indicates that you and Mr. Harper reside together. As another special condition, I'm not allowing you to go back to the 625 Hickory Court address while this condition is in place. Do you have belongings there that you need to collect?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the city?
It's in Forest Park.
Okay. What I will do is I will indicate here that you can go back so long as you're accompanied with a sheriff of the Clayton County Sheriff's Department. So you need to contact them within 10 days of being released. So that way you can schedule an appointment for someone to accompany you to go back and collect some of your undisputed items. Do you understand those conditions? Okay, your next court date is scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. You do have the option of waiving that preliminary hearing date. If you waive it, you'll sign a waiver form. You'll receive a new court date in the mail of when you come back for your arraignment, or you can leave it scheduled for the 27th. Do you want to waive it or do you want to leave it scheduled?
I'll wait.
Okay, so sign the waiver form that you will receive from the deputy. So that way I know you have indicated that you want to waive it. You will receive a new court date in the mail, but because you can't go back to the 625 Hickory Court address, you need to make sure you forward your address or provide a different address to the jail before you bond out. So that way you won't miss your court notice. I reviewed your application and I have appointed an attorney to represent you in your case. Do you have any questions for me, Ms. Morgan? Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Harper. Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Tyra, Finley. Stone. Oh yeah, I'll just go her back to that. Williams got Finley. Brown. You Tyra Finley?
Okay, if we can raise the cameras, Deputy.
Sorry about that.
No problem, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so may I have your name, please, ma'am?
Iris Henley.
Ms. Pamela, you've been charged with giving a false name. It's a misdemeanor. That bond is set at $2,000. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27, 2022. You do have the option of waiving that court date. And if you waive it, you'll just sign a waiver form with the deputies there and you'll receive a new court date to come back for arraignment. Did you want to waive your preliminary hearing date or do you want to keep it scheduled?
No, I'll waive it.
Okay, so just sign the waiver form. I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I've granted your request. So you will have an attorney present during your proceedings to represent you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you. Good afternoon. May I have your name? I can't hear you.
Randy Stone.
All right, Ms. Stone, you've been charged with 2 misdemeanors, both of them reporting false report of a crime. I've set the bond at $2,000 each, which is a total bond amount of $4,000. Do you understand what you've been charged with in the bond amount?
Yeah.
Okay, and your preliminary hearing date is being scheduled for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. You do have the option of waiving your preliminary hearing date. If you waive it, you'll just sign a waiver form and then the next court date will be arraignment, where you enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Do you want to waive your hearing date, your preliminary hearing date, or do you want to keep it scheduled? I can't hear you.
Keep it scheduled.
Okay. If you do bond out, that court date will be automatically waived and you'll receive a new one in the mail. I reviewed your application and I am appointing an attorney to represent you. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you.
Aisha. Philip. Aisha, right?
May I have your name?
Hello?
Aisha Silla. Okay, so Ms. Silla, you've been charged with 1 misdemeanor offense of criminal trespass. That bond is set at $2,000. As a special condition to this bond, you are to stay away from Mamadou Silla. You also cannot return to 6127 Yellowwood Court, College Park, Georgia, 30349. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond, your charge, and the special conditions?
Yes.
Do you have property you need to go back and get from that residence?
No.
Okay. Your next court date is your preliminary hearing date, which is currently scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. If you bond out, that court date goes away, but you also have the option of deciding to waive that court date here today. If you waive it, you just sign a waiver form, and then the next court date you get will be your arraignment. Do you want to waive your preliminary hearing or keep it scheduled?
Waive it.
Okay. So sign the waiver form that you will be provided there at the jail, and you will receive a new court date in the mail. Now, I'm reviewing your application for appointment of a counsel, and you do qualify, so I am appointing an attorney to represent you, but you will need to give a new address because the address you indicated here is the 6127 Yellowwood Court, where you can't go back. So you want to make sure you give an address where your attorney can represent you and where you can receive court notices. Understood?
Yes.
Okay, so if there aren't any questions, you may be excused.
Tatiana.
May I have your name, please?
Iliana Trimble.
Okay, so Ms. Trimble, you've been charged. You've been charged with 2 offenses. However, I've dismissed the criminal trespass damage to property. I've dismissed that one. So the one that remains is a felony offense, which is criminal damage in the 2nd degree. So that offense is a $3,000 bond. As a special condition, you are to stay away and have no contact with Ms. Varquez, the person who owned the vehicle. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond condition and the charge that I've signed off on?
Yes.
Okay. Your preliminary hearing date, because it's a felony offense, is going to remain calendar. That court date will be September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. I have reviewed your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I am appointing an attorney to represent you in this proceeding. You have any questions about the information I just mentioned to you, Ms. Trimble?
No.
Okay, best of luck to you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Donna, we got one more. Iliana Kvokin, would you like to see her?
What's the name?
Her name is Iliana Kvokin, and she's labeled as a fugitive for justice. I mean, a
Oh.
fugitive. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'll go ahead and do her.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Give me 1 second here. Let me pull your file. Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, Ms. Kvokin. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Judge Ferry. Your hearing is going to be a little different from everyone else. This hearing is what is called an extradition hearing. All of the rights that I advised everyone of earlier also apply in your case. However, this is not a first appearance hearing. You don't have charges that are pending here in Clayton County. You have been brought before the court because you have charges pending against you in another state, and that state is indicating that they will extradite you. So are you in fact Iliana Kvokin?
My legal name is Iliana Kvokin.
Thank you. Do you have an attorney representing you in this particular matter?
I know that my partner has been working on looking for a lawyer for me in this county. I have a lawyer in Pennsylvania.
Okay, understood. All right, so as I mentioned, you are charged with being what is called a fugitive from justice. So this hearing is being conducted pursuant to the official code of Georgia, Title 17, Chapter 13. It is alleged that you are charged with fugitive from justice. Specifically, the warrant states that you did enter and remain in the state of Georgia, knowing that you are wanted by the Philadelphia Police Department for aggravated assault, warrant number 172421. The date of the warrant is from April 19th, 2017. The charge in Philadelphia is being charged as a felony, and they will extradite you. That is what is indicated. Now, you do have a choice as to whether you wish to contest being extradited, or if you want to waive contesting being extradited, and then you'll be returned to the state without going through the formal extradition process. If you decide that you want to contest extradition, the court can commit you to the Clayton County Jail for an initial 30-day period. During that time, a warrant will be prepared under the governor's signature for your extradition back to Philadelphia. The court may consider allowing you to post bond, but the court is not required to allow bond in your case. And because you are wanted by another state, I am not setting a bond in your case at this time. If you do not wish to voluntarily return to the state of Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, excuse me, you may file what is called a writ of habeas corpus to contest the extradition. If you file the writ of habeas corpus, you can only contest 4 things. 1, whether the extradition documents are in order on their face. 2, whether you are charged with a crime that actually exists in the demanding state of Pennsylvania. 3, whether you are the person named in the extradition. 4, whether or not you are in fact a fugitive of justice. Those are the only 4 things you'll be able to contest. You cannot contest the issue of your guilt or innocence in this state of Georgia because there are no charges pending in this state. You are entitled to the advice of counsel in determining whether or not you want to contest extradition or in deciding whether you want to waive extradition. If the state of Pennsylvania is unable to extradite you within 30 days, you may be committed to the Clayton County Jail for an additional 60 days while waiting your extradition. If the extradition is not completed in 90 days, then you may be released. So with that information, as I indicated, the state of Pennsylvania indicated they will extradite you back. Do you wish to contest the extradition or waive formal extradition and voluntarily return back to the state of Pennsylvania to answer to the charge of aggravated assault?
I would like to voluntarily return to the state of Pennsylvania to answer the charges of assault.
Okay, so you will receive several copies of the waiver of extradition form. Sign each one of those. After you sign it, I will also sign it as well and send it back to the jail so they can begin processing you as soon as possible. And they'll get in contact with the state of Pennsylvania to let them know. All right.
Now, do you know how long will I stay in the county jail, Clayton County Jail?
I don't know. The intake there at the jail would know better because they're the ones that communicate with Pennsylvania to coordinate transporting you. So that's probably a question you may want to ask them there at the jail. But as I mentioned, they have up to 90 days.
So if I sign the waivers, I would still stay here until they come and pick me up, or I would have to travel there by myself?
No, so I'm not releasing you on bond. So you don't have a bond. So you do have to wait there for them to come pick you up. So if you sign the waiver, then that begins the process for letting them know they need to come pick you up. If you don't sign the waiver, then they're not coming to pick you up yet until we have your extradition hearing, which will be scheduled for a later date.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead and sign the waivers as you've indicated you would like to. I'll sign off on it, and that begins the process of Pennsylvania coming to pick you up. Understood? Okay, all right. If there are no more questions, you may be excused. Best of luck to you. You're welcome.
Emails.
Okay, thank you, deputies. I'm ready to start the male inmates. Good afternoon. May I have your name, please? Okay, so Mr. Allen, you have been, deputies, can we lift the cameras just a little bit so I can see Mr. Allen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Mr. Allen, you've been charged with 3 offenses. A misdemeanor driving on a suspended license, that bond is $1,500. A felony possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, that bond is set at $5,000. And a theft by receiving stolen property, I've set that bond at $5,000. So your total bond between all 3 offenses is $11,500. Do you understand what I mentioned as far as your charges and your bond?
Yeah.
Okay, your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th, 2022, 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. And I saw you completed an application for a court-appointed counsel, but I didn't have any income information for you. Are you in fact employed?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how much you make per month approximately?
No.
Okay, can you give me a guesstimate? Because I'm trying to determine whether or not you qualify to have an attorney appointed to represent you by the court.
Maybe like 2,000 a month.
Okay. I am going to appoint an attorney to represent you in your case. Do you have any questions for me regarding the information I just gave you?
Amen.
Okay, you may be excused. May I have your name, please?
Deontay Arnold.
Okay, so Mr. Arnold, you've been charged with a misdemeanor criminal trespass. That bond is $2,500. You've been charged with battery family violence. It was charged as a misdemeanor, but based on your criminal history of being convicted back in 2019 of the same offense, it's being upgraded to a felony charge. So that bond is set at $7,000. And then you have a felony charge of aggravated assault. I am not granting a bond on that offense. I am indicating or showing here that you were sentenced to 5 years probation out of Clayton County Superior Court, which began on July 11, 2019. So I'm scheduling your bond hearing date to take place on September 30th. 2022 at 8:30 a.m. so you can have the issue of bond determined at that time. It will take place by Zoom video conference. Your preliminary hearing date will also take place on September 28th at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference as well. And Mr. Arnold, I am appointing an attorney to represent you. Do you have any questions about the information I just gave you, sir? Okay, have a good day.
Bolton.
May I have your name, please?
Bolton.
Okay, so Mr. Bolton, you've been charged with 2 misdemeanors. Loitering or prowling is the first offense. That bond is $1,000. Your second offense is obstruction of an officer. That bond is $1,000. So your total bond is $2,000. As a special condition to being released on bond, you're to stay away from the Exxon gas station located at 7297 Terra Boulevard in Jonesboro, Georgia, unless you are making a purchase during business hours. Understood, sir? I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I have approved it. Do you have any, oh, excuse me, let me give you your preliminary hearing date. Your preliminary hearing date is September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom. You do have the option to waive that court date. If you waive it, you will just sign a waiver form, and then your next court date will be your arraignment where you plead guilty or not guilty. Do you want to waive it, or do you want to keep it calendared? If you bond out, it gets waived anyway, but it's up to you as to whether you want to keep it calendared and have that preliminary hearing, or if you just want to waive it and have your next court date sent to you in the mail.
I'll be bonding out, so it's gonna wind up waiving itself.
Okay, so I'll leave it calendared. Okay. Do you have any questions for me with regard to the information I've just shared with you?
No, ma'am. How do we be able to subpoena the, for me to come to court, how do I be able to subpoena the body cam?
Oh, so that is a great question for your lawyer. Your lawyer will be able to do it for you. Remember, I told you I appointed a lawyer to represent you. So just talk to the lawyer about some witnesses that you want or some evidence, and your lawyer will be able to issue the subpoena.
Thank
you. You're welcome. Best of luck to you. May I have your name, sir?
Michael Chapel, ma'am.
All right, so Mr. Chapel, you've been charged with several offenses. You have 2 misdemeanor offenses. One is driving on a suspended license. That bond is $1,500. You have a misdemeanor obstruction of an officer. That bond is $2,000. You have 2 felony offenses of being in possession of a Schedule 1 controlled substance in violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. I did not grant a bond on those offenses. You also have a felony charge of theft by receiving stolen property. I have not granted a bond on that offense either. I do show that you were just recently sentenced to 12 months probation back on August 29th of this year, 2022. And then based on your criminal history and the pending offenses, I am denying bond at this time, but I am scheduling a bond hearing date for you. That hearing date is going to be September 30th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. You will also have a preliminary hearing date. That hearing date will take place on September 28th, 2022 by Zoom video conference. I have appointed an attorney to represent you, so he or she will be present at all of your court appearances and will meet with you as well. Do you understand the information I just provided you, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, best of luck to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. May I have your name?
Davis.
Okay, so Mr. Davis, you've been charged with 2 misdemeanor offenses. Your first one is being in possession of marijuana less than an ounce. That bond is $1,500. Your second offense is being in possession of a drug-related object. That bond is $500. So your total bond amount is $2,000. I've scheduled your preliminary hearing date for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference, but you do have the option of waiving that preliminary hearing date and signing a waiver form, then you'll receive a new court date, which will be your arraignment, and you can plead guilty or not guilty at that time. Or you can leave your preliminary hearing date scheduled. And if you're still incarcerated by that time, then we'll have a hearing to determine whether or not there is enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. If you bond out, the hearing date gets waived and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Do you want to waive it or do you want to leave it scheduled? I can't hear you, sir. Okay, and so we'll leave it scheduled. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney, and you qualify to have the court appoint an attorney to represent you. So I have signed off on that order. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Davis? Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you. Good morning or good afternoon. May I have your name?
Dennis.
Give me 1 second, Mr. Dennis. I had some new information come over about you. One moment. Okay, so Mr. Dennis, you've been charged with 2 different counts of battery. They are both misdemeanors, as well as a misdemeanor cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. So for each of these offenses, the bond is set at $5,000 for each battery, as well as $3,000 for the cruelty to children. So your total bond amount is $13,000. As a special condition to your bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with Sonia Fisher and Armand Stanley. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your preliminary hearing date is currently scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. Because you're charged with all misdemeanors, I will give you the option to waive that preliminary hearing. You can keep the preliminary hearing scheduled, and if you're still incarcerated by September 27th, you're going to come back before the court, and the court will determine whether or not there's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. If you bond out before then, that court date automatically goes away. You can also make the decision today to waive that court date, and you won't have it, and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. So do you want to waive that court date or do you want to keep it scheduled?
I keep it scheduled.
Okay. So if you're still incarcerated, we'll bring you up at that time. And I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. I am granting your request, so you will have an attorney present to represent you throughout all of your court proceedings. You have any questions for me about the information I just gave you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you may be excused, sir. Are you Cornelius Dudley?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so Mr. Dudley, you've been charged with several offenses. You have a misdemeanor driving, distracted driving, essentially driving while using a cell phone. That bond is set at $500. You have a misdemeanor driving with no tag light. That bond is set at $500. You have a violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act offense. That is a felony of being in possession of marijuana more than an ounce. That bond is $5,000. You also have a felony possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. That bond is $5,000. You also have a misdemeanor being in possession of drug-related objects. That bond is $500. And you have a felony charge of being in possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute. That bond is set at $5,000. So the total bond amount between all of your offenses is $16,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as what you've been charged with in your bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your next court date is scheduled for September 28, 2022. That's your preliminary hearing date. It will take place by Zoom video conference at 8:30 a.m. I did receive your application for an attorney and I have granted your request. I've appointed an attorney to represent you throughout your case and in court. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, ma'am. If I get my own lawyer, can I use that one?
Yes, sir. If you get your own lawyer, you can certainly use that lawyer. That lawyer will know what to do to notify the court that you have representation. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And how much did you say the bond was again? I'm sorry.
$16,500.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Go to the window. Move over. Stand up to the window.
Okay, so Mr. Gray, are you Marquise Gray?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr. Gray, you have been charged with felony criminal damage to property in the second degree. I have denied bond at this time, sir. I show that you were just arrested and you have an open case in Fulton County back from April 24th of 2022, it looks like. And then based on your criminal history and what I reviewed and given the offenses, I'm denying bond at this stage. However, I'm scheduling a separate bond hearing date for you. You'll come back on September 30th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. By Zoom video conference to have the issue of bond determined at that time. Also, I am scheduling what is called your preliminary hearing date that will take place on September 28th for the court to have a hearing to determine whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you detained on the charges that you've been charged with here today. If you do get a bond, you're going to have the special condition to stay away and have no contact with Latavia Davis, and you won't be able to go back to 2001 Godby Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30349, apartment D6. I did review your application and I am appointing an attorney to represent you. So you will have an attorney present with you on both of those hearing dates. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charge, your court date, and the status of your bond?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions based on the information I gave you, Mr. Gray?
No, ma'am. You said I'll go back to court for bond September what?
30th. Okay, but you also have a preliminary hearing date 2 days before that. So your preliminary hearing is September 28th. Your bond hearing is September 30th. And your lawyer will be in touch with you, so you can talk to your lawyer about any other options that you may have before those court dates. All right, best of luck. All right, are you Nazir Huckabee? Okay, so Mr. Huckabee, you've been charged with several offenses. You have a misdemeanor offense of improper turn at an intersection. That bond is $500. You also have a misdemeanor offense of driving with no license. That bond is $1,000. You have an offense of being in possession of marijuana less than an ounce. That bond is $1,500. You have a misdemeanor offense of being in possession of a handgun under the age of 18. That bond is $3,000. And you also have a felony charge of criminal use of altering an ID of a weapon, and that bond is set at $3,000. So your total bond amount between all of the offenses that I mentioned to you is $9,000. So do you understand what you have been charged with, sir? And what I've mentioned as far as your bond? Okay. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th. Because one of your charges include a felony, you won't be able to waive that court date, but you do have the option of bonding out still. That bond is $9,000. But you'll still have to report back to court. It will be by Zoom video conference, so you don't have to come in person on September 28th at 8:30 a.m. I did receive your application for a court-appointed attorney, and I am appointing an attorney to represent you in your case. Do you have any questions for me, sir, regarding the information I just gave you? Okay, you may be excused, sir. Best of luck to you. Good afternoon. May I have your name?
Austin Jackson.
You said Austin Jackson? Okay, I need you to speak up for me, Mr. Jackson. You have been charged with one misdemeanor offense of criminal trespass for unlawful purpose. I've set that bond at $3,000. You've also been charged with one misdemeanor offense of theft by taking. That bond has been set at $2,000. So your total bond amount is $5,000. And as a special condition to the bond, you are to have no contact with the named victim, Nora Slayton. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, these are all misdemeanor offenses, so you do have the option of waiving your preliminary hearing. It's currently scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. If you bond out, it's automatically waived anyway. If for some reason you're still incarcerated and you don't waive that date, then we will bring you up before the court by Zoom, and the court will determine if there's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. So you can keep that court date scheduled, or you can waive it and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Do you want to waive it or do you want to keep it scheduled?
I'll be bonding out, John.
You'll be bonding out? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll keep it scheduled because it'll automatically get waived once you bond out, all right? I did review your application for an attorney and I have approved your request, and there will be an attorney appointed to represent you in your case. Do you have any questions for me regarding the information I just gave you, sir?
No, not at this time.
Okay, best of luck to you. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Jones.
Good afternoon. Are you Errol Jones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr. Jones, you've been charged with 2 misdemeanors. One tent violation, that bond is $500. And then driving on a suspended license, that bond is $1,500. So your total bond is $2,000, sir. I've scheduled your preliminary hearing date for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. You do have the option of waiving that court date. So if you waive it, you'll sign a waiver form today. You'll receive a new court date in the mail on when to come back for arraignment, where you plead guilty or not guilty. If you don't waive it, we'll keep it scheduled. And if you're still incarcerated by the time that date comes around, September 27th, then you're going to come back before the court by Zoom video conference. And at that time, there will be a hearing about the charges, and the court will determine whether or not there's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. If you bond out, either way, you will have the court date waived if you bond out. So do you want to keep it scheduled, or do you want to go ahead and waive it today?
I'll be bonding out, so.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just leave it scheduled because it will waive itself once you bond out. I saw you didn't complete your application for a court-appointed counsel. Did you want to be considered for one, or do you plan on hiring your own attorney or representing yourself? Okay, well, that's all I have for you, Mr. Jones. Did you have any questions for the court?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. May I have your name?
Ali Keely.
Okay, Mr. Keeling, you've been charged with 2 misdemeanors. The first one is battery. That is a misdemeanor offense. I've set that bond at $3,000. Your second offense is a misdemeanor offense, is disruption. Disruption of operations of a public school. That bond is set at $2,000. So your total bond amount is $5,000. Do you understand what you've been charged with?
Yeah.
Okay, are you a student at Morrow High School?
Yes, ma'am.
What grade are you in, sir?
11.
You said 11? Okay. And so normally what I usually do with similar charges like yours is I have a stay away provision about not going back to a particular location. But you obviously need to be in school. So I'm not going to say you can't go back to school. I'll let the school officials deal with whatever they need to deal with on the administrative side of things. But you will have a no contact provision in here. What that means is you are to have no contact with the named victim in this case, Mr. Tolerance Jones Jr. You can't contact him on social media. You can't contact him through any third party. You can't walk past them in the hallway. You can't contact them by email, phone. You can't go near him, his family members, or anybody associated with him that's near him. Do you understand that, Mr. Keeling? Okay, and if you violate these bond conditions, it's a very serious offense. I understand based on, it looks like my review of your criminal history, you don't have any priors. I do need you to understand that this is a serious offense, sir. If you violate it, then this bond that I'm giving you will be revoked. You will be arrested again, and we're gonna hold you. You will not be released until such time that your case has been resolved through the court. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your next court date is, so as I mentioned, your total bond amount is $5,000. Do you believe you're going to be able to make bond, sir? I can't hear you.
I say yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. That preliminary hearing date will be waived. It'll be canceled if you bond out. If you don't bond out and you don't opt to waive it here today, then essentially you're going to be brought back before the court on September 27th. And there's going to be a hearing to determine whether or not there's enough evidence or probable cause to keep you detained for the charges that I mentioned. Now, you do have the option of waiving it today by signing a form today that waives that preliminary hearing. And then the next court date you get will be a court date to determine whether you're guilty or not guilty. But if you think you're going to be able to bond out already, as I mentioned, that court date automatically gets waived. You don't have to sign a waiver form saying that you want to waive it. It will be waived once you bond out. But you do have the option of doing that today if you want to sign the waiver form to waive it, or if you just want to leave that court date scheduled. Do you know what you want to do, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to waive it or do you want to leave it scheduled?
We'll leave it scheduled. I'm be bonding.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave that court date scheduled. I did receive the application that you completed to have an attorney appointed to represent you. I am granting that request, and you will have an attorney present during all of your court proceedings. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me regarding the information I just gave you?
Oh, man.
Okay, you may be excused. Best of luck to you.
Kelly D.
All right, I'm sorry. May I have your name?
Sorry, Judge, I'm before Kelly.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Kelly, you've been charged with felony murder. Based on that offense, I am not setting a bond at this time. I am scheduling a bond hearing date for you. That will be on September 30th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. You will also have a preliminary hearing date. That date will be September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. That will take place by Zoom video conference. I am appointing an attorney to represent you, sir. I understand that you indicated that you are employed. However, just given the nature of the offense, I will go ahead and appoint an attorney to represent you since I'm not granting bond at this juncture. Do you understand what I've mentioned to you as far as your charge, the status of your bond, as well as your upcoming court dates?
Yes, ma'am. I do have a question, Your Honor, if you don't mind asking me.
Okay, what's your question?
I have a preliminary Monday on the 12th, and I have a bond hearing on the 16th. Will those roll over to those, or I have to wait?
Was that related to your arrest back on October 26th? I'm sorry, I said October, August 26th of 2022? Okay, I did see that. Do you have an attorney appointed to represent you in those charges?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, so talk to your lawyers. Sometimes what lawyers will do is they'll get with the state and have them hear everything all at once. If for some reason you're not able to have it heard all at once, I'm still going to keep these court dates scheduled, the court dates that I mentioned. So talk to your lawyer. They possibly can hear it all on that date if everyone agrees to. Otherwise, you'll still have your separate dates of September 28th and September 30th, because these are charged separately from your previous arrest. Understood?
Yes, ma'am. So I do got one more question. I know it's completely off subject.
I don't know if you want to ask me anything off subject, but
Okay.
I'll hear you and I'll let you know if I can answer it or not.
Yes, ma'am. Never mind, Your Honor.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, talk to your lawyer though, all right?
Yeah, we talked to her on Monday.
Okay.
Huh?
Kelly J.
So how do I get back to
Okay, may I have your name, sir? You said Joanne Kelly?
Now,
Okay, so Mr. Kelly, you've been charged with one misdemeanor offense of simple assault, family violence. I've set that bond at $3,000. As a special condition to the bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with your father, Wesley Kelly. I'm also not allowing you to return back to the residence located at 6197 Thornhedge Drive in Riverdale, Georgia. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond, your charge, and the special condition?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you have personal belongings that you need to collect from there?
Yeah, I got my clothes and stuff here.
Okay.
Actually, but I'm gonna do what you say, man.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll give you the option of going back with a sheriff to collect some of your undisputed items. But you have to call the sheriff's department and make the appointment within 10 days of being released. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I did receive, well, let me back up for a second. Your court date is being scheduled for September 27, 2022. You do have the option of waiving that court date. So you can sign a waiver form today and you don't have to appear on September 27th. The next court date you get will be for arraignment, where you'll plead guilty or not guilty. If you bond out, that court date waives anyway. However, if for some reason you're still incarcerated on September 27th and you don't waive that court date, then you'll be brought before the court by Zoom video conference, and the court will have a preliminary hearing to determine if there's enough evidence or probable cause to keep you incarcerated. Do you know whether you want to waive that court date or do you want to keep it scheduled?
I'm a band out, man.
Okay, so I'll keep it scheduled because then it'll automatically waive itself once you bond out. I did receive your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I've granted your request to have an attorney represent you in these proceedings. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Kelly?
No, man.
Okay, best of luck to you, sir.
Appreciate it, man.
Good afternoon. May I have your name, sir?
Brian Kelsey.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kelsey. So you have been charged with what I'm showing is one offense of simple assault. I've set that bond at $5,000, but I'm also adding the offense of battery. It's a misdemeanor offense, but that bond is being set at $10,000. So your total bond amount between both offenses is $15,000. As a special condition, you're to stay away and have no contact with the named victim, Sachin Perumal. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond and the special condition?
So you're telling me I have 2 charges instead of the one that they told me?
Correct, sir. So in addition to the simple assault, I am adding the charge of battery, just given the statements that was included in a warrantless arrest affidavit. I do find that there is sufficient probable cause to add the offense of battery.
Okay.
Do you understand what I've mentioned? Okay. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27, 2022. At 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. If you are still incarcerated on September 27th, then you will be brought before the court, and the court will determine whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you detained on your charges, whether there's enough probable cause. You can waive that court date today. And if you waive that court date today, then you'll receive a new court date on when to come back for arraignment, where you'll plead guilty or not guilty. I did set the bond at a total of $15,000. So if you bond out, the court date automatically gets waived and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Do you want to waive? You want to keep it? Okay. So I'm going to keep it scheduled for September 27th, as I've mentioned. In reviewing your application for court-appointed counsel, I am granting your request, and you will have an attorney appointed to represent you. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Kelsey? All right, you may be excused. Best of luck to you.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning or good afternoon. Are you Jamal Muhammad? Okay, so Mr. Muhammad, you've been charged with misdemeanor battery. That bond amount is $5,000. You've also been charged with obstruction of an officer. That bond amount is set at $2,500. So your total bond amount between both charges is $7,500. And as a special condition to you getting this bond and being released, you were to stay away from that store clerk. The name is Yemezgin Fitsum. Also, I am not allowing you to go back to that store where the alleged incident occurred at 510 Valley Hill Road in Riverdale, Georgia, 30274. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges, the bond, and your special conditions?
Yes, ma'am. It was sort of self-defense, like as in him running, fighting me.
So I understand that. Remember at the beginning, I said, this isn't the time to plead your case. You're going to have an opportunity to do that. Okay. I'm going to give you a court date right now, and you can let me know whether you want to waive it or keep it scheduled. That court date is your preliminary hearing date. That's scheduled right now for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. On that date, if you're still incarcerated, we're going to bring you back before the court. And at that time, there will be testimony from both sides. The state will bring witness testimony, and then your attorney will be present and determine whether or not there'll be any evidence that your attorney will present for you. And at that hearing, the court will listen to the evidence and make a determination whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you incarcerated. If there's enough evidence to keep you incarcerated, then you will remain incarcerated and until you bond out, and your case will be bound over to state court. Now, you can waive that preliminary hearing date. All it does is move your case along a little faster. If you don't want to have that hearing, then if you waive the hearing today, you'll receive a new court date on when to come back for arraignment. and you will be able to plead guilty or not guilty. Now, regardless of your decision, you still have a bond today. That bond is $7,500. If you bond out, your court date of September 27th gets waived automatically anyway. So do you want to keep that hearing date scheduled, or do you want to sign a waiver form and waive that hearing date?
I want to keep it scheduled.
Okay, so we'll keep that court date scheduled. I also received your application for a court-appointed counsel. Let me take a look at it.
Why's my obstruction so high?
I can't hear you.
That's my obstruction so high. I got 500 added to 2,000. I was thinking it would be at least 1,000, 2,000.
I'm not sure what you are referring to. There was no preset bond. After I reviewed what was contained on a warrantless arrest affidavit, given the circumstances and the charges, and I also reviewed the criminal history as well, I've decided that $2,500 was a reasonable bond amount. So I'm keeping your preliminary hearing date for September 27th. I did review your application, and I am appointing an attorney to represent you. So certainly talk to your attorney about certain defenses that you may have, and your attorney will know how to advocate for you. You have any other questions?
5,000 for battery?
Yes, sir. 5,000 for the battery and 2,500 for the obstruction of an officer. So the total is 7,500. All right. You're welcome. Good afternoon, sir. May I have your name? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Price.
Okay. Mr. Price, you've been charged with felony financial transaction card theft, as well as another felony financial transaction card fraud. I am denying bond at this time. I've reviewed your criminal history and the current status of things, and I do see that you were just sentenced to 12 months probation out of DeKalb County State Court back on May 19th of 2022. That was case number 21C04552. So at this time, I'm denying bond. However, I am scheduling a separate bond hearing date for you. That will take place on September 30th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom. And then you'll have your preliminary hearing date as well that I described earlier. That will be September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom as well. I did receive your application for a court-appointed counsel. I've granted your request, and you will have an attorney present to represent you. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and the status of bond, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
You have any questions based on the information I just gave you? All right, you may be excused. Best of luck to you. Good afternoon. May I have your name? All right, Mr. Rutherford, you have been charged with felony aggravated assault, felony possession of a knife during the commission of a felony, and felony battery family violence. You are being denied bond at this time on all three offenses. I'm scheduling a separate bond hearing date. That bond hearing date will be on September 30th, 2022. You will have a preliminary hearing date as well, September 28th, 2022. If you are given a bond, part of the special conditions will be to stay away and have no contact with Priscilla Johnson, and you won't be able to go back to 5946 Mount Zion Boulevard in Monroe, Georgia. I reviewed your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I have appointed an attorney to represent you. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges, the special conditions, and the status of your bond, sir?
Yes.
You have any questions based on what I just gave you?
What, the 28th?
28th for your preliminary hearing and the 30th for your bond hearing.
All right.
All right. Best of luck to you.
Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. How you doing?
Good afternoon, sir. Tell me your name.
Blaze Schaefer.
All right, Mr. Schaefer, you've been charged with 4 offenses. You have a misdemeanor driving with no insurance. That bond is $1,000. A misdemeanor driving open container. That bond is $500. You also have a misdemeanor possession of marijuana less than an ounce. That bond is $1,500. You have a felony charge of being in possession of amphetamine, Schedule 2 drug in violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. I have denied bond at this time on that offense. I do show, based on your history, that you are currently serving a 7-year probation sentence that began May 12, 2016 out of Gwinnett County Superior Court. I am scheduling I'm scheduling a separate bond hearing date for you, September 30th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. I'm also scheduling a separate preliminary hearing for you. That's September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. Both will take place by Zoom video conference. You understand what I just mentioned to you as far as the status of your bond and the charges?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I thought I was complete with the probation period. It was first offenders under the First Offenders Act. I said I started in 2016.
When do you believe you completed that?
I went up and signed the papers actually in Fulton County. This was, I want to say maybe a year ago, maybe more than that.
You said Fulton County? I'm showing this out of Gwinnett, sir.
But it was transferred to Fulton because I stay in Fulton.
Okay, let me see. I don't see that. Let me check. Hang on.
Transferred to Fulton and then sent back to Gwinnett toward the end. I believe it was a 7-year sentence in all.
It was 7 years. Hold on, let me get to, like I said, I had to review over 800 pages this morning of everyone's file. So give me 1 second. Let me get to your name.
It was also the first offender.
Okay, here we go. Let's see.
Haven't been contacted by probation agency or had reporting over a year and a half. I'd say.
Mr. Schaefer, hang on. I'm give me 1 second. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying what you're talking about. What I do see is back in 2013, you mentioned you had a first offender. I do see that on a previous offense out of Morrow Municipal Court. That was a theft by shoplifting where you pled first offender under that. But that's not the offense I'm referring to. The matter I'm referring to was from Gwinnett County, where you were arrested back in December 12th of 2013. You weren't sentenced until you weren't sentenced until a few years later. That was May 12th of 2016 from Gwinnett County Superior Court. And you were sentenced to 7 years probation on the conspiracy to commit a felony offense. I'm reading all of the conditions and the sentencing, and I don't see anything that shows up indicating that you're not on probation. So what I would highly recommend, Mr. Schaefer, is that you get in touch with your probation officer.
I would not know who that is. They haven't contacted me or haven't been called to report or anything in over a year and a half. It's been literally that long. I don't even know who a probation officer would be.
When was the last time you reported?
Oh man, I was on non-reporting for some time in Fulton County before it all ended. So I haven't reported. This is, I'd say 3 years or more. I haven't been contacted by anyone after I filled out the information for Fulton County.
How long were you on non-reporting?
Again, this is just a guesstimate. I'd say I was non-reporting for about a year, maybe a year and some change. But it's been about 3 years since I've had to actually report to them. And then I went up to Fulton County and signed the papers for the non-report.
Okay.
And, since then.
Okay, so what I'll do, hang on for me, Mr. Schaefer. I do want to check one other thing. Deputies, if we can hold Mr. Schaefer, let me get through the rest of the calendar, and then Mr. Schaefer, I'll bring you back up. I want to look into a couple of things, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. May I have your name? Corinne Scott. All right, Mr. Scott, you've been charged with speeding misdemeanor. That bond is $500. And then a misdemeanor driving on a suspended license, that bond is $1,500. And then also being in violation of your decal not being displayed, that bond is $500. So between the three offenses, your total bond amount is $2,500. Do you understand what I mentioned as far as your charges?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will be by Zoom video conference, but you do have the option of waiving that court date. If you waive it, you'll sign a form here today. You don't have to come back on the 27th. You'll get a new date, which will be arraignment, where you'll plead guilty or not guilty. If you bond out, it automatically waives anyway. If for some reason you're still incarcerated and you don't waive the court date, then you'll come back before the court. We'll have a hearing to determine whether or not there's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. Do you want to waive that preliminary hearing date today or keep it scheduled?
May I have the bond price again?
It is $2,500, $2,500. So we'll keep it scheduled. Let me look at your application. So you didn't fill out the form for a court-appointed attorney. Do you plan to represent yourself or hire a lawyer to represent you?
Represent myself.
Okay, I'll indicate such. You have any questions for me, sir?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Best of luck.
They still got 4 minutes to the go.
Oh, I cannot see this next person. We can raise the camera on this. I'm sorry, may I have your name? Mr. Shell, I had a couple of questions. Did you appear here yesterday?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I don't know why they apparently broke it up for some reason.
Okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
All things happened at the same time, and I didn't find out until last night that everything wasn't included yesterday when Judge Knight gave me a bond amount.
Okay, yeah, because I see the paperwork where he gave you
Duplicates and I'm not sure, yeah.
okay, so I do see where he gave you a bond. But what I need to do, just so you know, I need to just take a look at this. I'm gonna hold you as well to the back of a line because I want to cross-check and make sure these offenses that I have in front of me are not duplicates from yesterday. So I need to cross-check that. So if you can just hang on for a few, I'll bring you back and let you know what I have in front of me for you. All right, thank you. So just hold tight. Good afternoon, may I have your name?
John Sprinkle.
Okay, I can't see Mr. Sprinkle. All right. Okay, so Mr. Sprinkle, you've been charged with one misdemeanor, possession of being in violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. That bond is set at $3,000. Then you have a misdemeanor possession of a drug-related object. That bond is $500. So your total bond amount is $3,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond? Okay, if you can fix your shirt for me, sir, please. We're in court.
I have a button right here. Yeah, just hold it. Oh.
All right, your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. You do have the option of waiving your preliminary hearing since you're charged with misdemeanors. If you do bond out, because I've given you a bond, that court date is automatically waived. If you don't waive it and you're still incarcerated, then you'll be brought before the court and we'll have a hearing to determine if it's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. Do you want to waive it or you want to keep it scheduled?
I want to bond out.
Okay, you're gonna bond out either way because you have a bond. So if you believe you're gonna bond out, I'll just keep it scheduled because it'll automatically waive itself once you bond out, okay? And once you bond out, you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Now, I did receive your application for a court-appointed attorney. You indicated that you were working, but you didn't indicate what your monthly income is. How much do you make per month?
Well, I technically don't know because I just started this job a week and a half ago.
Did they tell you how much they're gonna pay you?
Well, I get paid $14 an hour.
Okay. I'll go ahead and appoint an attorney to represent you, sir. So you will have counsel present with you throughout your court proceeding. You have any questions for me, Mr. Sprinkle? All right, you may be excused, sir. Best of luck to you.
Wait, one question. How much was the bond again?
$3,500.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Aaron Christopher Thomas.
All right. Hello, Mr. Thomas. You have been charged. All right. You've been charged with two misdemeanor offenses. The first one is battery. That I've set that bond at $5,000. The second one is theft by receiving stolen property. That bond is $2,000. The total bond amount is $7,000. As a special condition, you're to stay away and have no contact with Ajit Singh. That is the named convenience store clerk. So you can't have any contact with that person. Also, I'm not allowing you to go back to the location where the incident allegedly took place, which is at 6937 Jonesboro Road in Jonesboro, Georgia. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond condition?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Let me tell you what it says on the warrantless arrest affidavit. It may clear up some things for you. It says that on September 7, 2022, you committed the offense of battery when you caused visible bodily harm to Ajit Singh, who was the convenience store clerk, after you stole items from the store and did not pay for the said items. It was 2 cell phone chargers valued at $30, and you passed all points of sales with the items. And it says that the offender was confronted by the victim and then came back inside the store to fight the victim and left visible injuries on the victim's knees and hands. The incident took place at 6937 Jonesboro Road, Jonesboro, Georgia, in Clayton County, Georgia. So that is what the officer swore out on the warrantless arrest affidavit. Now, I am scheduling your next court date to take place on September 27th at 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. Now, you're charged with misdemeanors, so you have the option of waiving that court date. You can waive it, and you'll sign a waiver form today, and you'll receive your next court date in the mail, which will be your arraignment, where you plead guilty or not guilty. If you don't waive it, I'm sorry.
Am I allowed to bond out? Am I allowed to make a phone call and bond out? Because this is my first time getting in trouble in the state of Georgia, and I don't know exactly how.
Mr. Thomas, I wasn't done talking. Maybe if you waited, you would have heard all of the information I needed to provide you with. I was providing you with information that is important for you to hear so you can make a decision. Okay, so give me an opportunity to finish giving you the important information that you need to know, since you say this is your first time and you want to make a phone call. So as soon as we get done, you'll be able to make a phone call, but maybe you want to hear the information that I need to give you, so that way when you make the phone call, you can pass along that information. As I mentioned, I currently have your court date scheduled for September 27, 2022. That's your preliminary hearing date. If you're still incarcerated, then you'll be brought before the court on that date to answer to the charges. Do you want to waive that hearing date, or do you want to keep it scheduled?
I just want to bond out, Your Honor. I'll figure out the best one to get out.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it scheduled. You do have a bond, and once you bond out, that court date will be automatically waived. I did receive your application for a court-appointed counsel, and I've appointed an attorney to represent you. Have a good day.
Devin Waller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Waller. Okay, Mr. Waller, you've been charged with several offenses. You have a felony theft by receiving stolen property. You also have a misdemeanor theft by deception, as well as sorry, give me 1 second. As well as a felony offense of removal or falsification of a motor vehicle or engine. You do have a bond on the theft by deception. That bond is $2,000. I'm denying bond on the other offenses. I am showing that you were sentenced to a 4-year probation that started as of September 6th, 2022, you were sentenced to 4 years probation.
Yeah, I haven't even been able to get out since then. The probation hasn't started.
Okay, so let me look at the warrant. I see. So these warrants are from 2020. And it looks like, did you already serve your 1-year sentence, sir?
Yes, ma'am. I just came here from there.
Where were you confined?
In Henry County.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, Mr. Waller, give me 1 second. Okay, so on both of your felony offenses, I am given a bond on both of them of $7,000 apiece. So your total bond between all 3 offenses is $16,000, 7, 7, and 2. Do you understand what I've mentioned? Now, I can't promise you that you won't have a probation hold because you did just start that probation sentence. And so that's something that the jail will let you know whether or not probation will choose to hold you.
Well, they knew I was coming over here.
You said they were aware? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So your preliminary hearing date is being scheduled for September 28th, 2022. So any event that you are not able to bond out by that date, then you will be brought before the court. There will be a hearing to determine whether or not enough probable cause exists to keep you detained on your charges. You understand what I've mentioned, sir? Okay. I am appointing an attorney to represent you as well, so you will have counsel present that you can consult with. Do you have any questions for me based on the information I provided you with?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make that bond amount. Is there gonna be another bond here where I can get a reduced bond?
So at the preliminary, talk to your lawyer. Oftentimes what lawyers will do is they'll talk to the state and they'll try to resolve the bond issue at the preliminary hearing or before then. So your lawyer knows what to file in order to have that addressed if you want your bond reconsidered. Okay, so talk to your lawyer. I've appointed you one. Do you have any other questions based on the information I just provided? Okay, you may be excused.
Warren. Warren, take your hands out. Take your hands out. You're gonna hold your gun to cover your chest, okay? Hold it throughout the entire time. Button up. Stand right there. All right. Say for your full name.
May I have your name?
Warren.
Okay. All right, Mr. Warren, you've been charged with one misdemeanor offense of criminal trespass. I've set that bond at $2,000. As a special condition to that bond, you can't go back to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport without a valid travel ticket to fly on that day. Do you understand what I mentioned as far as your bond and the special conditions, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 27, 2022. 8:30 a.m. You can waive that hearing date or you can keep it scheduled. Do you want to waive it or you want to keep it scheduled?
If I waive it, what that mean? What happened?
Okay, so if you waive that preliminary hearing date, then you'll sign a waiver form and then your case will be scheduled for arraignment. And then during arraignment, that's another court date, you'll be able to plead guilty or not guilty. If you don't waive it, then we'll keep it scheduled. And if you're still incarcerated, we'll bring you up on September 27th. And on that date, the court will determine whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you incarcerated. So if you think you'll bond out, the court date will automatically be waived. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to bond out.
Okay, so do you want to waive it? It just moves your case along a little quicker. And then the next court date you get will be arraignment, or you can keep it scheduled.
It's scheduled.
Okay, so I'm keeping it scheduled for September 27th. And I'm also going to appoint an attorney to represent you, Mr. Warren. So you'll have counsel present to help you with your case. You have any other questions for me?
No.
Okay, best of luck to you. Have a good day.
Washington.
The judges did Waller or Warren? Warren. He did Warren?
Good afternoon. May I have your name?
Patrick Washington.
Patrick Washington. Okay. All right, Mr. Washington, you've been charged with 1 misdemeanor battery family violence. That bond is set at $5,000. As a special condition to your bond, you cannot have any contact with the named victim, Ms. Chantel Washington. I understand she's your mother, but you can't have any contact with her while this bond condition is in place. I am also not allowing you to return back to 1951 Southampton Road while this bond condition is in place. Is that a shared residence? Do you need to collect some belongings from there? Okay. I will select the option here for you to make an appointment with the sheriff's department to accompany you back to that residence to collect some personal belongings that are not in dispute. You have to make that appointment within 10 days of being released. So as I mentioned, your bond is $5,000. No contact with your mom, direct or indirect. Don't go back to 1951 Southampton Road, Atlanta, Georgia, without the escort of a sheriff. You understand those bond conditions and your charge?
I have a question about the charge.
Yes.
Officer, he was charging me with a separate battery instead of a family violence.
No, it was the warrant says battery family violence. It's because it involves your mom. So that's the charge. Did you have any other questions about what I've mentioned so far?
Would I be able to get a signature bond or?
No, we don't do signature bonds, sir. Let me look at your application. Yeah, no, I won't be able to give you a signature bond. We don't do signature bonds, but also I just reread the warrantless arrest affidavit. I'm going to keep the bond at the $5,000. Your next court date is scheduled for September 27, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. by Zoom video conference. You do have the option of waiving that court date. You can waive that court date today. And what that means is that you won't have a preliminary hearing. Your next hearing will be arraignment where you plead guilty or not guilty. If you bond out, that court date is automatically waived. But if you don't want to waive that court date and you don't bond out by the September 27th date, then we'll bring you up on September 27th. And you'll have a hearing to determine whether or not there's enough evidence or probable cause to keep you incarcerated. Do you know if you want to waive that hearing date or do you want to keep it scheduled? Okay, so I'm keeping it. I'm sorry?
I have to pay the full 5,000 or?
No, sir. You can go through a commercial bonding company if you don't have the money, and the commercial bonding company will charge you up to 15%. For example, if they charge you 10%, then what that means is that you'll pay 10% of the 5,000. So that'll be $500. If they charge you more than that, you'll pay whatever percentage to the bonding company, and then the bonding company will post the $5,000 bond for you. So you pay them a reduced amount, and then they'll post the $5,000 bond for you. You understand that? So what you need to do is you need to call around, see if you can get, you can't call mom. Call around, see who you can get to help you post this bond, or you can call some bonding companies as well to get some prices. Let them know that your battery charge is $5,000 or the bond is $5,000, and they'll tell you how much you need to pay. All right. I am appointing an attorney to represent you, sir. So you will have counsel present to help you with your case. Do you have any other questions for me? Okay, have a good day.
Hey, how you doing today, Your Honor?
I'm doing well, sir. What's your name?
William.
All right. All right, Mr. Williams, you have been charged with one misdemeanor offense, possession of marijuana less than an ounce. That bond is $1,500. You've also been charged with 4 different felony offenses of financial transaction card theft. Those are all felonies. I've set bond on each of those offenses at $3,000. So your total bond amount is $13,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned? Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th. 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will take place by Zoom video conference. I reviewed your application for a court-appointed attorney, and I am appointing an attorney to represent you. Do you have any questions for me regarding the information I just gave you, sir?
Yes, if I wanted to hire my own attorney, can I do that later on?
Absolutely. You can. Just let your new attorney know that you have been appointed an attorney, and he'll know what to file to notify the court.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Best of luck to you.
You as well.
Young.
I'm gonna tell you it's Young.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Young. You've been charged with 2 misdemeanors. Criminal trespass, that bond is $2,000, and public, let's see, committing certain acts in transit, and that bond is $2,000. So your total bond amount is $4,000. Do you understand what you've been charged with in your bond? Yes, okay. Your preliminary hearing date is being scheduled for September 27th at 8:30 a.m. You do have the option of waiving that hearing date. If you bond out, if you know you're going to bond out, that hearing date automatically gets waived. If for some reason you're still incarcerated and you don't waive that date, then you will have a hearing to determine if there's enough probable cause to keep you incarcerated. If you don't think you're going to bond out and you don't want to wait till the 27th to have a preliminary hearing, you could waive today. It moves your case along a little faster, and then the next court date you'll have will be arraignment, where you plead guilty and not guilty. But it's completely up to you of whether you want to waive your hearing date today or whether you want to keep it scheduled.
Okay, I can't find out. If I wait till preliminary, will they handle the case then at preliminary?
It's a possibility, but I just want to make sure you understand you do have a bond. You do have a bond. So,
Can't find out.
oh, you said you don't think you'll be able to bond out. Understood. So the preliminary hearing is not your final hearing date. That's just to determine whether or not there's enough evidence to keep you incarcerated. But you could possibly have your case resolved at the at arraignment. Arraignment is the hearing date where you plead guilty or not guilty. But I am appointing an attorney, so I do think you should consult an attorney, to assist you with your case. But for purposes of today, if you're concerned about being incarcerated for too long, then you can certainly waive. But you could also talk to your lawyer, and your lawyer may be able to resolve your date on the preliminary hearing on September 27th. I can't tell you today because I don't know what your lawyer would do.
Okay, well, if I waive, will I be in court sooner than the 27th?
You typically are given an arraignment or maybe around about the same time, honestly. You'll probably have arraignment because that's in about 2.5 weeks. You may have your arraignment court day around that same time, truth be told. But I don't know because I don't have the calendar. I don't schedule those.
Okay, and they'll handle my case then?
At arraignment? Yes, at arraignment, you can plead guilty or not guilty.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Or they can handle it, the preliminary, it don't matter, as long as they handle it, either one of them.
So do you want to keep your preliminary hearing date or do you want to waive it and move to arraignment?
If they can handle that preliminary, I can wait till then, but
okay, so what I'll do is I'll leave it scheduled for you. But I've appointed an attorney to represent you. And so when you talk to your lawyer, tell your lawyer you want to resolve your case in full, so that way you can try to get it resolved on that date. All right. Do you have any other questions for me, sir?
no.
Okay, best of luck to you. Okay, deputy, so let me take a look at, I'll be back. I think that was everyone with the exception of Samuel Shell and Blaze Schaefer holding for me. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor. That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, give me a few minutes. Let me look into both these individuals and I'll be right back.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, deputies, I'm ready. Let's have Mr. Schaefer come on up.
All right, Your Honor, I'm here.
Okay, so Mr. Schaefer, today is your lucky day. So I am going to, I'm gonna give you a bond on the felony offense that I mentioned I was gonna no bond. So that bond amount is $5,000, sir. Your other bond amount still exists. So your total bond between all of the offenses is $8,000. So I am granting you a bond. Everything else is still the same. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. It will be by Zoom video conference. So because you have a felony charge, that court date that is not going away. So you will have to make sure you appear in court on that date. I think I've already told you that, I don't know if I told you or not, but I am appointing a counsel to represent you. So you will have counsel present throughout your case to advocate for you. You have any questions for me, sir?
Just a few. How would you suggest I proceed in trying to handle the confusion of that sentence that was given to me before? Because I am sure that I completed the entire sentence. It was a 7-year sentence, but
talk to whoever your probation officer was at that time. I don't know, but you do need to talk to someone to make sure that things are in order. So you're just gonna have to go back through your information, find out the contact and talk to that person. Because if I'm granting you a bond, but I will say if a probation hold pops up or something like that at the jail, you might run into an issue. So I do recommend you contact probation.
Bolton or Gwinnett?
I was showing out of Gwinnett, but if your case has been transferred to Fulton, then maybe Fulton, just the last point of contact that you had. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck to you. You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Shell, I'm ready for you. All right, Mr. Shell. So I did review everything. So it looks like definitely all of the charges that were contained on the warrantless arrest affidavit that Judge Knights told you about yesterday, those are all the charges. It looks like we just didn't have a bond order for all of them. So he signed the bond order for some of them. And so I guess that's why you're back before me, because there wasn't a bond order to issue bond on the remaining offenses. So let me recap what happened yesterday, and then let me tell you the offenses and the bond today, okay? So yesterday, Judge Knights entered a bond order for you on the offense of being in possession of dangerous drug container. That was $500. Violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. That bond was $2,000. Another dangerous drug container charge, that bond is $500. Then you have another violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act, that bond is $5,000. Another violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act with manufacture, sale, or distribution, that bond is $5,000. Another violation of Georgia Controlled Substances Act, that bond was $5,000. And then another violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act, that bond was $5,000. That's what Judge Knight signed off on yesterday. However, the new bond order to cover the rest of the offenses that were on the warrant also includes what's before me today. Possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. I've set that bond at $10,000. Then there's possession of marijuana over an ounce. That bond is $5,000. Violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. That's as it relates to cocaine, that bond is $5,000. Violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act regarding alprazolam, that bond is $5,000. Being in possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime or commission of a felony. I've set that bond at $5,000. You have another violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. That's related to THC powder packets. That bond is set at $5,000. A misdemeanor possession of drug-related object. That bond is $500. And then you have a misdemeanor red light violation. That bond is $500. So the total bond for the offenses before me today is $36,000. And that's in addition to your bond from yesterday, which is 3, 8, 13, 18. Looks like yesterday the total was $23,000. So those are your bond amounts for this particular offense. Now, you were already given a preliminary hearing date yesterday for September 19th. So I'm keeping it on that same date. Okay, so you'll have a preliminary hearing on that date. Also, I'm appointing, I don't know if Judge Knight's appointed an attorney for you. Were you appointed one yesterday? Okay, so I've signed the order today to appoint an attorney to represent you. And I've indicated on my order that your preliminary hearing will take place on September 19th.
Okay, question. I'm not a felon.
What's your question? What's your question?
Why is the possession of firearm by a felon? I'm not a felon. I have a governor's pardon signed in 2007 to pardon my charge in 2007.
Well, I can read to you. It's a 4-page warrantless arrest affidavit. I can read to you what it says, but if you want me to just read to you the particular portion about your felony, it's okay. It says a criminal history check revealed that said offender was a convicted felon when said offender under the First Offender Act was revoked on March 8th of 2011 for theft by shoplifting. So apparently whatever was ran based on your history, it says that your first offender status was revoked. So that's what it says as it relates to that. Now, as I mentioned, I'm appointing an attorney to represent you. Talk to your lawyer. You do have a lot of charges here, but your lawyer will know exactly what to do to help you in your defense. Okay.
What was the total of everything, Your Honor?
It was, today was 36,000. Yesterday, hold on, let me do the calculator.
Yesterday was 23.
I think it was 23,000. Let me double check. Hang on. 1, 3, 8, 13, 18, 23. Okay, so everything together totals $59,000. $59,000. Okay, did you have any other questions, Mr. Shell?
Yes, ma'am. It pertains to the September 19th preliminary. How will the court appointed attorney reach out to me prior to then to tell me how to set up?
They should. Well, the jail will set up the Zoom for you. If you don't bond out by September 19th, the same way they set it up today, the same way the jail set it up today, if you're still incarcerated, they'll bring you up. If you've bonded out before September 19th, then essentially you'll receive notice with a Zoom link so you can log into the Zoom to appear.
Do you know if that'll be through the attorney or mail?
Well, actually, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Look, I take all of that back. If you bond out, your preliminary hearing date is waived. I'm so sorry. It's been a long morning. So if you're bonded out by September 19th, your preliminary hearing date is waived. You'll receive a new notice in the mail, and that next court date will be arraignment. And during arraignment, that's when you'll plead guilty or not guilty. You'll certainly talk to your lawyer prior to then. So your lawyer should reach out to you at the information that you included on your application for a court-appointed attorney, okay?
Your Honor, how soon will I be able to, or how soon this information I'll update? Because my family members, of course, didn't have the total because of the situation.
Well, it's gonna, like I mentioned, I had a long calendar today. I had to see 41 people. So it's probably gonna take me another hour. It's 2:30 now. It's probably gonna take me another hour to get through all the paperwork, to scan it over and send it to the jail. So they probably won't have anything till about 4:30-ish, as far as being able to contact the jail to find out your bond amount. But I've given it to you, $59,000. So your family members can start calling around to some bonding companies, okay? All right, best of luck to you, sir.